Hello everyone, Namaste. Today is December 16th, 2021. The following are the important articles that we have to read in the Hindu newspaper or from the Hindu newspaper for our competitive exams. The first article is Cabinet approves 76,000 crore push for semiconductor makers. This is very important. You have to understand the importance of manufacturing of semiconductors in the supply chain, and you have to understand why this PLI scheme is significant steps towards achieving some sort of uh, own industrialization in terms of semiconductor manufacturing in our country. That is the first article in the first page. The second article that you have to read is flaw on voters portal fixed, possible data leak averted. So yesterday we discussed about how important the protection of cybersecurity assets is, how under threat they are from adversaries, not only from China, from other countries also. So you have to think about that cybersecurity and cyber warfare domain. Coming to page number 5, the article is Be Dispassionate on Mullaperiyar Supreme Court. So try to get an understanding of what the Mullaperiyar issue is, which states are involved, which river is involved in, the location of the river, in the sense the geographical location of the Mullaperiyar Dam. This will certainly help you in not only giving a perfect answer either in mains or interview, this will also certainly help you in state level service examinations, because local issues are also important for our exams. Coming to page number 6, a false conflation between duties and rights. As I said, a lot of discussion is taking place around constitutional rights, fundamental rights, constitutionality of our country, the republic itself. Whether those discussions are valid or not is not up to us. We shouldn't worry about that. But as long as there is a discussion happening, we have to be aware of those things, and we have to understand the reasons as to why these discussions are taking place. Currently, there is a feeling in the government itself that the judiciary needs a reform, whereas the judiciary feels that it is above some sort of an reform. So all these things, at the end of the day, they boil down to what the Constitution of India lays down in its pages. So that is how you have to take up these kinds of articles. So coming to the next, mixed signals. This is in again turning India into a reliable supply chain partner. The dichotomy here is, for a long period of time, Western countries have invested a lot of money, lot of resources into making China what it is today. It's not something that happened out of nowhere. It happened because other countries were interested in making China that partner that they were looking for. Since the last few years, particularly last 5 years, the world has kind of woken up to the fact that China is not the reliable partner that they deemed it to be or they needed it to be. So whatever their hedges or bets were in China, all bets are off right now. And at the end of the day, they are looking for an alternative. And India is positioning itself to be that alternative, more reliable, more open, more accessible. But again, there is a dichotomy here, there is a duality here. So at a point in time where we are realizing the constraints in supply chain and countries turning more inward than outward, is India better off by investing more into that kind of a supply chain logistics, or better off by investing more into our own needs? So the dichotomy is, should India spend money to turn itself into a manufacturing hub and a supply chain hub, or should India spend its money on making it self reliant? So that is the dichotomy that exists, and that is what this article tries to address. So a thorn in Pakistan Bangladesh relations. So this is one thing that is very important. Should a country that had done unspeakable atrocities on another country should apologize or not? Recently, there was spate of apologies that were given by the French, by the Germans for their actions during the First World War, during the Second World War, or not only during the World Wars, but during individual um, attempts of war that these respective countries carried out on smaller other countries. So, what is the significance of apologies in this case? As I said, try to find out few examples where country had apologized for their actions in the past, because that is a process of healing. Germany in Africa, again France also in Africa. Try to understand those examples. Coming to op-ed page number 7, the price of food must figure in the policy. So this is a good article in the sense, at what cost should the government frame a policy so that the income of the farmers goes up? So does it come at the cost of the overall prices of the food in the country? At the end of the day, the policy also, the author here argues that whenever the government is framing a food policy or a food price policy in our country, it should take in account the possibility that the cost of food might go up for consumers who are majoritarian middle class in our country. So that is what the article argues, and I think that's a better way of putting it, rather than an inclusive policy must also include consumers. At the end of the day, it's not the government, it's not the farmers, it should also include the end consumer who purchases those food for their consumption. So in a country where the middle class dominates, it is imperative that the policy also include their concerns in the framework. That is what this article argues, not at the cost of one another. The government shouldn't frame a policy where the interests of the consumer are protected at the cost of the interests of farmer, nor the government should frame a policy where the farmers should come into this picture where the farmer interests of the farmer are protected but of the consumer are forgotten. So that is not a balanced policy, that is an imbalanced policy, and that doesn't bode well for anybody. So coming to page number 8, cabinet law not likely for electoral reforms bill. So this is very important. This will kind of shift how we vote in the future. There is a lot of opposition to it, there is a lot of support for it. Try to understand what nuances that this electoral reform bill is trying to bring in. Is it good for it or is it bad for it? Not to extend irrigation scheme for 5 years. Again, learn the scheme name, what are the parameters of it, when was it launched, where what is launched, who launched it. Again, more in terms of state service examinations, less in terms of central government examination. But drinking water is something that you have to be aware of. Coming to page number 9, President to open renovated Hindu shrine in Bangladesh. Again, remember, the 71 war has to be learnt with a lot of concentration. This is the 50th year anniversary of liberation of Bangladesh. A question will be asked in that regard. Try to be aware of what kinds of questions they might throw you at during examinations. Indigenous efforts to make UAVs crosses a milestone. There is one more article in the today's paper that we'll discuss later that talks about indigenization of armored forces or the equipment of armed forces. Try to understand what they are saying in there in the text and context article. I'll tell you when we come there. Page number 10, SC rejects Maharashtra plea for census raw data. So try to understand why Maharashtra is asking for the raw data of the census of 2011 and why the government is refusing to give out that information. Ensure medical grade oxygen plants are fully operational. So this is one kind of a question that you might not be aware that they'll be asking in this regard. So first try to understand what is oxygen, what is medical grade oxygen. Try to understand the difference, what separates it, how they are transported. See, it might look silly for you right now, but trust me, being just aware of how oxygen is differentiated from medical grade oxygen will help you somewhere or the other. So try to understand what this is, because at the end of the day, oxygen was a big factor during the second wave. So some sort of a question will be asked either in the interview process or in the prelims. So try to understand a little bit about oxygen from the science point of view, the biology point of view, and also the specific point of view. Coming to page number 11, Putin-G cement partnership in face of Western pressure. So this is again in regards to China-Russia relations and what the impact it is going to have on Indian subcontinent. Recently, Russian President and Indian Prime Minister have met. We have agreed to enhance our cooperation in various sectors, including space, defense, and other areas. So, in the backdrop of that, now China and Russia are coming to new agreements that are again opposing the Western values that America tries to come up with in their own interests. In the sense, try to understand what this relationship means to not only India but also to other parts of the world. Russia lists out demands of security to US. Again, this is in regards to US Russia relations. What are the concerns that Russia is laying out here? Not important for exams, just for your understanding. WHO says jabs may be less effective against Omicron. So this is again, try to understand the policy inconsistencies that WHO had since the beginning of COVID-19. Now, on one hand, you have other countries, medical boards suggesting that it is high time for people to get booster shots. On the other hand, they are saying that children should be vaccinated. In other countries, they are saying children shouldn't be vaccinated. So at the end of the day, it is going to come down and fall on Indian shoulders. At the end of the day, Indian government, Indian health boards have to come up with a policy either to give booster shots or not to give booster shots, whether they are effective or not. So in that backdrop, try to chart out the timeline of World Health Organization statements, suggestions, big ones, so that you have a proper understanding of either the consistency or inconsistency. Moving on, US tests laser weapon in West Asia. So Gulf of Aden, geography point of view, map pointing. What is this laser weapon? What are these laser weapon technologies? Are they the future? That is how you approach it. US threatens new measures against Myanmar junta. Just be aware of the current scenario taking place in Myanmar, and this becomes very important because of the recent ambush that happened in northeastern states, not only of the civilians but also of the Assam Rifle security forces. So Myanmar role is very important in that. From that perspective, read it. Coming to page number 12, business, rupee slumps to 20-month low against dollar on FII outflows. Always try to understand the parameters upon which the rupee value is hedged against a dollar. Trying to getting a basic understanding of the factors that impact the value of rupee by the dollar will always help you when you are answering economic questions. That gives you the basis to give an example or an explanation as to why it is that the Indian rupee always succumbs to the dollar's pressure. In the sense, I hope you understand what I am trying to say. So try to understand the factors that impact the value of rupee in the global economy. Makes sense to keep industry banking separate, RBI's route. So try to understand this. One of the Achilles heel of Indian economy is its banking sector. Whether we like it or not, that's the truth. The history has been filled with ample examples how banking sector brought countries to their own knees. Best example is 2008 crisis of America. And by the way things are going on right now, America is heading for a long recession that nobody has expected. Maybe everybody expected except the Joe Biden administration. So try to understand the role of banking sector in our country, the history of banking sector in our country, why reforms recently brought in by the government and the RBI in regards to banking sector are for the good or for the bad. Try to get that dichotomy going in your answers, which will always help you in getting a better understanding. Again, semiconductor PLI will spur ecosystem NASCON. Why this semiconductor PLI is important? Why? Try to get an understanding of the importance of semiconductors in our society. Now moving on to text and context. As I said, coming to text and context, the push for zero budget natural farming. Yesterday also we had an article in this regard. Try to link up yesterday's article with today's article. The growth of Indian defense exports. So India is also becoming self-reliant in terms of its defense requirements. Not only that, we are trying to export whatever we are manufacturing to other countries. So try to understand from this article from that perspective. So these are the important articles that we have to read for competitive exams in today's Hindu newspaper. Thank you. Namaste.